Hello everyone, welcome to GiBi's Horror Homestead. Welcome to episode 2 of the FNAF Q&A. In this series, I'm going to be answering your questions that you leave in the comment section of my videos. This is actually not just episode 2, but actually part 2 of episode 1, because that recording session lasted an hour and a half. So we're going to get to the next couple questions here. Once again, if you do have questions, you can leave them in the comments below. If you say people were meant to question if the brother was the previous security guards before Sister Location spelled it out, what hints or evidence existed in the FNAF 4 games to lead people to the idea, the FNAF ones It's Me fits, but I can't think of anything else, or how they really connect all the games by itself. I think this is more of just a narrative thing. I do think it was a retcon. I do not think that when Scott made FNAF 1, 2, and 3 that he was intending Mike Schmidt to have this, like, tragic backstory. I think that in FNAF 1 especially, Golden Freddy was just supposed to be spooky. The same way that the posters changing were just spooky, and It's Me could mean anything. I also have a kind of another side theory I'm going to get into later about what I think the DCI in FNAF 2 is, but we'll get to that. I think that when FNAF 4 was being made, Scott decided to retroactively make Mike Schmidt also into the FNAF 3 guard, and then also make him Foxy Bro. And I don't think there's evidence in those games to point to them being the same character. I think it is just what is clearly narratively established within FNAF 4. FNAF 4 is the origin story for the three main characters of the games. It is the origin story of Golden Freddy. I think we were very obviously supposed to figure out that Cici's Golden Freddy because he gets bitten by Fredbear. The origin story of the security guard being Mike and his motivation for coming back each night, and we see Purple Guy in the game, and so it's also his origin. So it's more of just understanding the patterns of how narratives work as opposed to there being evidence within the games, which is something that I specifically try to do in my theories, where I try to point out, hey guys, I think we might be missing the forest for the trees here. First and foremost, this is a story, not a puzzle, and we gotta look at what the story is saying and trying to tell us, or where the story is going or should have gone, or how these two things link thematically. So evidence-wise, there isn't any. The evidence is that that's just it's just what's happening in the story. What do you think about the shadow animatronics? I have no idea. Like, not even a little bit. After I talk about the Fazbear Frights books, which are what, like, they discuss agony, I might have more of an idea, because that's what people kind of think they are. They think there's some sort of agony manifestation. When I talk about the AR game, where Shadow Bonnie makes his next appearance, I might have more ideas. But as of right now, I'm just like, I don't know, they're spooky Easter eggs. My issue, why would Scott make the car in Later That Night purple just like William's car? If Orange Guy is not William, then Scott had to have known that making the car purple would make us connected to William's car. I think that any amount of color theory, especially in the mini-games in FNAF, are overly simplistic. In older video games, there's a very limited color palette that can be used. I think it's something like 32 colors on the NES. It's actually 56. And obviously the NES is newer than the Atari 2600 that is, like, used in the FNAF, like, that's the style that the FNAF minigames take. William's car, Orange Guy's, the car in Later That Night being purple doesn't necessarily mean anything for multiple reasons. One, in Midnight Motorist, all the cars are purple. They're not all William. Two, purple is generally just the way that mediums like video games, older video games, depict something being black, because the road is black, the night is black. If the car was black, you couldn't see it, so purple just means it's black. Purple is also a villainous color. Purple and green are typically the color of bad guys. Like, think Maleficent or the Green Goblin, right? Like, their colors are green and purple. Those are the bad colors. So even though Orange Guy isn't William, he is still a bad guy. His car is still symbolic of his treachery, his evil, that being that he is literally a child abuser. In my theory, he beats up his son. So it's purple because he's a bad guy. I think if he was meant to be William, the sprite would be purple. But in general, just looking when you're doing the 8-bit mini games, the colors are all representative of real things and aren't necessarily supposed to be like one-to-one, because there's a limited color palette on the old video game that the style is mimicking. The mimic. I've always wondered, since FNAF World there's a picture of the box being opened, would it mean the box is having the contents changed by FNAF World? That's just a leftover file in the game. It's possible that Scott intended to open the box in FNAF World and decided against it, or maybe he was going to open it in a FNAF World update, but there's just so many things that get left in video games during development, I do not think it means literally anything. Do you think Frights and Tales are canon? I'm going to skip that one.
The Afton staff bot voice lines were actually meant for a different pair of staff bots in the kitchen, so it's not relevant information to the Aftons, it's just a gag. This is in reference to the video I made about Mrs. Afton, where I played this audio about these two characters talking and said, oh, this is Mrs. Afton and William Afton, and it's related to the staff bot family in the basement. I got my information from the cutting room floor. One of the issues with any amount of FNAF theorizing about things you cannot just see in-game, right, because this is cut content, is that your knowledge of it only comes from the experts who are retrieving the data, right? If the only source I can find for this information existing comes from people who got it wrong, then I'm going to get it wrong. I got multiple comments of people saying that basically this article that I was getting my information from was wrong. It doesn't necessarily change most of the things in my video, especially that portion of the video, because all that portion does is give more evidence that the staff bot that looks like Mrs. Afton is supposed to be Mrs. Afton by pairing it with this dialogue, and that doesn't change anything if the dialogue doesn't pair with her. So yeah, thank you for informing me of this. You and everyone else who commented the same thing. I don't think there's a substantial amount of evidence present to rule out the possibility that Cici isn't a bear, but okay. I said Elizabeth isn't literally a clown. Cici isn't literally a bear. I guess Cici could be a bear. It's just a little jokey joke. The official FNAF Encyclopedia states that Cici is the main character of FNAF 4, and that makes no sense. Is that book canon and correct, or does Scott think he's funny? The FNAF Encyclopedia has a lot of errors in it. Plenty of other FNAF YouTubers have made videos going over every single inconsistency and obvious factual error in the book, so I think that using anything in it as evidence is quite silly. I also think that even if we ignore that, even if we take the book as 100% canon and factual and reliable, Cici is still the main character of FNAF 4 because of the minigames. You could say that Cici and Mike are both the main characters of FNAF 4. Where's Security Breach? I'm not even going to touch Security Breach or any of the newer Steel Wool games until after the story is concluded. I will consider the story concluded, basically, when a game does not end on a cliffhanger, right? Like, FNAF 3 could have been the end of the story. FNAF 4 could have been the end of the story. Sister Location could not have been the end of the story because it ends on a cliffhanger. FNAF 6 and UCN could as well. The fact that the last game we got, well, technically, I guess Help Wanted 2 took place between Security Breach and Ruin, but the fact that Ruin, the most recent game on the timeline, ended on a cliffhanger of Cassie falling down the elevator means the story's not over. So until we reach a point when there's a natural stopping point to, at the very least, the characters of Gregory, Vanessa, Cassie, the Mimic, etc., I'm not going to bother making a video because the story's still ongoing. So that is Where's Security Breach? Is it possible that the MCI that unfolds during FNAF 2 is the same as the MCI referenced by the newspaper clippings in FNAF 1? Yes. I'm not necessarily saying I believe this, but I do think it's possible, and I do think it was actually a retcon. I think that one of the things that the community, as well as myself, look too closely at is the idea that in Foxy Go Go Go, he's leaving Pirate's Cove to go see the bodies, and that there is no Pirate's Cove in FNAF 2. I think that that is an oversight by Scott, as opposed to being a super duper obscure lore hint of Foxy finding bodies. I think it is merely supposed to be a representation of Foxy discovering that the MCI has happened. I don't think that's 5 additional kids. I don't think that's setting that in the era of the MCI in 1985 as opposed to the dead children from 1987. I think when FNAF 2 came out, that the section we play, Save Them, where you walk around as Freddy and the puppet's there and William's there and there's bodies all over the floor. I think that that is intended at the time to be the one and only MCI. This is a much bigger topic that people could discuss, and obviously it was not canon as of probably the next game in the series, but I think that for a while it was possible. I think it's possible that, like, at the time, the first FNAF location and Fredbear's Family Diner were the same thing, possibly. Or the same building was used in the first Freddy's and FNAF 2, right? Like, I think that looking back on it now, we can see that these were different events. Clearly, they cannot canonically be the same thing now, but I think at the time we were meant to be seeing the real one and only missing children's incident within FNAF 2, and that it got retconned later. Hot take, what if Happiest Day, putting the souls to rest, is done through dreams? In the movie, Mike was able to interact with his memory of Garrett's kidnapping during the dream through Cassidy, or whatever the stand-in for Golden Freddy is in the movie, and he also had the option to alter it, so he could be with his younger brother again. Is it possible that freeing the spirits is about putting their memories back together, then altering them to something good so they get their happiest day. Kinda like overwriting a memory card. Isn't that similar to what happens in the Fazbear Frights books? Yes, very possible. One of my ideas is to make a video about what happens in the movie and how it could relate to the books. Basically, what happens to Garrett and how that is important to the themes of the games. That's one of the videos I wanted to make and will still make, but the people chose me to make the Mrs. Afton video instead. There's a very popular theory that Remnant can latch on to people. One of the ideas is that a lot of the remnant from the children after William gets spring-trapped is like kept inside of him, so that within the spring-trap suit itself is remnant from the little ghosty children that get him trapped in there, and so that by destroying Springtrap, you're also setting free that remnant. That's possible, obviously. And so the idea that, like, when Mike is sleeping and he sees the children in his dream, it's because they're somehow attached to him, or they're somehow attached to the building in general. I personally think that what allows Happiest Day to happen is that there is a remnant within the arcade machines, because all of the minigames, most of the minigames in the series are physical arcade cabinets, or games that we can assume exist, right? Like Foxy Go 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 is probably a real game you can play on an arcade cabinet in FNAF. And so that by doing things in these video games, it affects things on the other side. This is generally video game theory. We know that in FNAF World, there is a video game land that the spirits live in, and that there are mini games that connect it to the real world, right? There's a line that says what happens out there has an effect in here. And so therefore, by playing these mini games that have remnant in them, you can actually affect the afterlife. And that is what I think causes Happiest Day. So could it be dreams? Could dreams play a role? Absolutely. They certainly do in the movie, but that's not the theory I go with. I go with the video game cabinets have remnant in them theory. Hey, sorry, quick question. Charlie and her friends had a friend die at Freddy's when they were younger, and his name was Michael. What could that possibly mean? Because he's Cici, so would that mean anything, or was it an error? So this is in reference to the Silver Eyes trilogy, where the main cast have a friend named Michael, who was killed in the MCI incident. The MCI incident, wow. The ATM machine. They have a friend named Michael, who was killed in the MCI. He's one of the 5 victims. I do not think that this means anything. It's just Scott reusing a name. The same way that Vanessa in the FNAF movie is obviously not the Vanessa from the games. They're just, in that continuity, their friend Michael, who is not William's son, who is not Cici, who's not related at all to any other incarnations of Mike, his name's just Michael. I've always agreed the phone guy's not Purple Guy, but if that thing in Purple Guy's hand isn't a phone, then what's it meant to be? This is in FNAF 2, where Purple Guy's obviously holding something. I think it's supposed to be some sort of key that activates, and by key I don't mean like a door key, think of like an Allen key. It's just something that activates or deactivates from the outside the spring locks in a spring lock suit. Here's a thought: maybe the reason why FNAF 1 animatronics stuff you into a suit is because they witnessed William Afton die from a spring lock suit. I think that we should probably just take Phone Guy at his word that they see you walking around as a naked endoskeleton and they want to stuff you. I think that's definitely what was meant at the time of FNAF 1. I think that the retconned reason comes from FNAF 4, when the little girl says, I heard they come to life at night, and if they catch you, they stuff you in the suit. I think that a lot of the kids from FNAF 4 probably are MCI victims, and that this general notion that they had in life sort of is reflected in their ghostly actions. It's very unclear how Remnant and Possession work, and in general, I do not think that, unless you're put together the way that, Baby is Elizabeth, I don't think that the soul inhabiting the body has any sort of real control over the animatronic. I think it just sort of animates them. And even Baby isn't literally Elizabeth, right? Like, Henry calls her Elizabeth, and then says, I don't even know if you remember that name. So I don't think that they're one-to-one controlled, but I do think that there are some echoes of them as people in the animatronics, and so they might remember this childhood playground rumor they heard that the animatronics stuff people, and therefore they might then stuff people, right? Because there are naked endoskeletons as Easter eggs in FNAF 2, specifically, and it does not get stuffed the way that the player character does when he is found. So I think in FNAF 1, you're just supposed to take Phone Guy at his word, and by the time of FNAF 4, it's been retconned into being that they are sort of controlled in part by this rumor that existed. Why that rumor exists, much more up to interpretation. But in my understanding of the timeline, the spring locking incident doesn't happen until well after FNAF 2, where they try to stuff you in the suit, and obviously that, this person specifically says FNAF 1, but that happens in FNAF 2 too, so. Why do you have so many binders? Pokemon cards, maybe? Yes. How much space did this take up on your hard drive? Okay, so the actual file, the final 8+ hour video file that was uploaded to YouTube is 136 gigabytes. With that said, I have a folder on my computer that I still have every piece of, where I'm pulling, like, images from, right? Like, here's all the images I'm using for FNAF 1. Here's all the YouTube videos that I use clips from. So that folder is 560 gigabytes. But if you remove the big video from it, the 136 gigabytes, it's like 430. So the project file, 430 gigs. The video file itself, 130 gigs. Hey, what TCGs do you play? I got bored in this section and saw a deck box, and I'm now curious. I personally play Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And have somewhat dabbled in Magic the Gathering. I played Pokemon as a kid. I still kind of do. I don't like go to tournaments or anything, but I like to keep up with it. I played Yu-Gi-Oh! As a kid, like on the playground. Don't really care about it anymore. I've been playing Magic for over 10 years. I used to go to tournaments. I kind of stopped during COVID and then never started again. But I do very, very, very much like Magic. And then if you listen to my podcast, Slappindippity Hobos of Happy Slappy Town, you'll know that I recently got into Lorcana, and I think it is basically just Magic but better. So the only real ones I play are Magic and Lorcana, but I do like Pokemon. Why did you make the Fredbear plushie an Emo Pirate? The voice that I used for the Fredbear plushie in the long video, well, the Fredbear plushie actually in FNAF 4 is supposed to be William's voice, so I made him sound like a gravelly Englishman. But the Fredbear character in FNAF World section was Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, so I think that's why you think he sounds like an emo pirate. Because I gave him a southern accent and then just put Vegeta's voice over him. Why do you only call Mangle he, him when Mangle uses he, him, and she, her alternating with each use? So my initial intention was every time I mentioned Mangle to swap between calling him he and calling him she. I kind of do that same thing whenever I say the name of the orange soda, Fanta, because a lot of people don't like that I call it Fanta, and so I now intentionally go out of my way to flip-flop every other time I say it between Fanta and Fanta. But this video was just so long, and in my opinion, it would ruin the joke if I ever missed a time, right? Like if I called Mangle she twice in a row instead of alternating he, she exactly 50% of the time, and so I just didn't even attempt it. I was like, there's going to be one take where I say it one way and the next take where I say it the other way, and it's just never going to work. There's no way I can make it perfect. I'm going to drive myself insane trying to make it perfect, so I didn't even try. Do you think the FNAF 2 voice in the movie at the credits is Henry or William? So at the end of the movie, it says like, it's spelling out like find me or come find me or something. I do not think it's William. I think that it's either Garrett or Henry. I think Garrett is the obvious answer because he is missing, and so in a sequel, theoretically, he would be who Mike goes and finds. But I do state pretty definitively my opinion in my video that the voice in the FNAF 2 games, the SAVEHIM, that voice is Henry, and so it's possible that in the movies it is also Henry. But yeah, not William, either Henry or Garrett. Why do you think Yendo is the Fredbear endoskeleton when he clearly looks like a Funtime Endo? I think it's possible that the endoskeletons and casings get upgraded over time, right? Like Fredbear and Golden Freddy are not the same suit, ? So it's possible that the endoskeleton was also changed. And that what they would do is they would, William would melt down the original endoskeleton, remove the remnant, create the new endoskeleton using his new upgraded Funtime technology. It's the same physical metal, different design. Why do you think he's such an important character as he's meant to be an Easter egg? Why do I think Yendo is important? Because there's no answer to him. Because I fall victim to the same trap that everybody does where I need to find an answer for why everything exists. So I think that he is important because his name is Yendo, which is probably short for Yellow Endo, the same way that Golden Freddy was called Yellow Bear in FNAF 1. And I think that it is just a good explanation as to what he is. That he is the missing endoskeleton from the Golden Freddy Springlock suit. What do you think of other Easter egg characters like JJ Lolbit and the random Endo in FNAF 2? That's actually a really good question compared to what I just said, since I don't come to a conclusion about them. I think and hope that we get a lot more answers about Balloon Boy in whatever the carnival game that we're going to get in the future is, and so that would also answer JJ. Lolbit, no idea. The Endo in FNAF 2 might just be an Endo in FNAF 2 that, again, came to life because there's clearly some amount of Haunt-ness in the building, which is why the paper plate dolls change and move. So it's not necessary that there's like another victim. I do say that I think it's possible that because there are 6 piles of blood, but only 5 bodies shown in FNAF 2, that there's a 6th body, it is hidden under the table, that JJ is from under the table, and so the 6th body is JJ. don't necessarily believe that, but then again, it doesn't explain why I think Balloon Boy's possessed. There's just a lot of stuff we don't know, and that I don't think that Scott intended at the time to, like, have an answer. What about the designs of the Scrap animatronics, excluding Lefty? Where do you think the new suits of Scrap Baby and Scrap Trap came from? So Scrap Baby could have literally just gone to a junkyard and pulled scrap together, the way that, like, Eleanor is found in the Tales books. Not the Tales books, the Fazbear Frights books. People talk about how on Scrap Trap's design, there are parts of his suit that were not present in Springtrap, so therefore he must have, like, fashioned new suit parts from something, which is very possible, because as much as I believe that Remnant can heal your body, I don't necessarily think it can heal a cloth suit. This kind of goes back to the broken glass outside of the Midnight Motorist kid's house. You could explain it as it was a design change that Scott made, and it's not meant to imply literally anything, or you could come out of it and say that he went and he found another Springlock Bonnie suit and then just fixed himself up with it. It could be either one of those. The mask on Molten Freddy is just Funtime Freddy's mask. I think that after Baby split from them, they then just went back into the bunker and got that mask and then left. I don't think they were made from trash bits. I do think that Scrap Baby was made from trash. The other ones, I don't think so. I think Molten Freddy got his bits from going back into the bunker. Where was the puppet during Follow Me? Since the puppet was not at the FNAF 1, like the in FNAF 1 location, I think it's possible that it was just not present. Like, when they packed up FNAF 2, the puppet went somewhere, the toys got dismantled, and that the original animatronics went to the FNAF 1 location. So just physically somewhere else. How couldn't they find the bodies? If the animatronics reeked, it seemed improbable they would never bother to take them apart. Again, I think this is a kind of a misconception, where people think that the bodies are still in the animatronics as of FNAF 1. In the movie, I think it's pretty clear that the bodies are not in the animatronics. I personally think that William took them out at some point, and that the animatronics are simply possessed because that's where the bodies were put. Just how big was Freddy's? Was it like Chuck E. Cheese's, where there was almost one in every city, or is it just a couple restaurants around southern Utah? That's a big question, and your answer to that question will completely change your view of the franchise and the timeline. There's an implication that there's even multiple pizzaplexes, and I do not have an answer to that. My current timeline understanding is that the Freddy's that we know about are the only ones, as opposed to it being a national chain or a regional chain. And so therefore the only ones that exist are the Fredbears, the Unseen, First Freddy's Location, FNAF 2, FNAF 1, Fazbear Frights, etc. So yeah, I don't have an answer, because if I had to pick one, because what you pick will change everything, and I picked that it was a one-of-a-kind family business thing. How many official FNAF animatronics are there? Oh, I wouldn't count the ones in special delivery, but besides that, they're all official. And when were the Fun Times and Toy Animatronics made /Y? I love your videos. Hope you have a great day. I think the toys were not made by William. I think the Fun Times were made by William. I think the Fun Times were sometime... I think it went cloth suits, spring traps, spring lock suits, original withered suits, but before they were withered, Fun Times. And then you have the mediocre melodies, like, somewhere in there. And I think they were made because technology just kept improving. I do not think the toys were made by William, and so they would have just been a different manufacturer, and that they were made to distance themselves from the fuzzy suits that were used when the murders happened. Why do you think the games are out of order storyline-wise? That's just how storytelling works. Like, Scott made a game, and then wanted to explore the game and made the backstory, so then the next one was in the past, and then the next one was in the future, and then the next one was the furthest in the past. It's just how games work, right? Like, I look at, like, The Legend of Zelda, where, if you look just at the 3D games, and I know that the story is continued in the other games, but looking just at the 3D games, you have Ocarina of Time, and then Majora's Mask, and then Wind Waker, and then Skyward Sword is a prequel, and then you have, like, Breath of the Wild, like, 10,000 years later. It's just like, and Wind Waker and Twilight Princess happen at the same time, but it's a split timeline time travel thing, doesn't matter. It's just how stories are told sometimes. Same thing with Star Wars. Or even like the Avengers, right? Like the third Marvel movie is Captain America, which takes place back in the fourth Marvel movie, which takes place back in World War II. Why is it like that? It just do be like that sometime. Who is your second least favorite FNAF character? I think everyone knows that my least favorite are the Biddy Babs. I might put like Lolbit as my second least favorite. If you're counting book characters, then the list just expands too much. If we're talking like game, Aftons, Emily's, and animatronics, That could be a band name, just saying. Probably Lolbit is my second least favorite after the Biddy Babs. The combination of what is seen in the shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child, and the line, don't you remember what you saw, is genuinely frustrating to me. They both feel important, but also unanswered. So the first one of those is something Scott said during the GT livestream, and I think it's just pointing out the Easter egg that people may have missed about the fact that you can see William helping someone get into their suit. Don't you remember what you saw? You know, oh, the bad guy's in there. Don't you remember what you saw? Go the other way. The exit's the other way. I am going to make a video explicitly, especially, simply about that line. So you're going to have to wait for my video on that topic to get my answer on that. Do you think the stuff about the rogue indie dev means that almost everything we know about FNAF is a myth, rumor, or complete nonsense? No. So in FNAF VR, you learn that the company of Fazbear Entertainment has hired somebody to make video games about the rumors and legends of FNAF. And it was a theory, and it is still something that some people believe now, that means that all the FNAF games before VR are the games that the indie dev made. And no, I do not believe that's the case. But my answer to that question is going to tie in with my opinion on Fazbear's Frights, the book series, which is what I'm going to be ending this video on. I've already skipped a couple questions about it, so I will get into that later. What real evidence is there for the Cassie's dad thing? And could it point to other characters as well? So this is the theory that Cassie from Ruin is the daughter of the Bonnie Bully from FNAF 4. Having not explored that area of the timeline very well, I don't really have an opinion other than what I've been told by other theorists, but I think it is very compelling that Bonnie Bully is Cassie's father. If you're trying to figure out who Cassie's father is, and you're looking at characters who already exist, the reason I think that Bonnie Bully is the only candidate is because he is the Bonnie Bully, and we know like three things about Cassie's dad. He likes Bonnie, he works at Fazbear's, he is the general age of somebody who could be Cassie's father. Bonnie Bully fits those, and if it ends up being like Chica Bully, then like why? Why would it not be Bonnie Bully? And even like Matt Pat's interpretation about like they have the same skin color, and it just makes too much sense to me. I don't see why that wouldn't be the case. How can we find out about FNAF post UCN? There's plenty. If you mean from me, it's going to be a while to wait. If you mean from anyone, from any source, all the YouTubers I've linked in the description of that video are amazing. Obviously, Game Theorist, not Matt Pat anymore, but Game Theory. John FNAF, ID's Fantasy, Rytos, Cyrus Squawk, Simple 7, Hyperdroid. There's just so many great FNAF videos, FNAF YouTubers. What is the crying child's name in your opinion? I don't think he has a name. I'm just going to keep calling him Cici. Do you actually believe that the fan interpretation of Cassidy is actually canonical? So there is no fan interpretation of Cassidy, right? Everyone has their own headcanon. There's no agreed upon theory about Cassidy. Some people think that she's the one you should not have killed. Some people think that she's some people think that she's a he. Some people think that she's, X, Y, or Z. I think Cassidy is just the name of the character that we think is in Golden Freddy. There is no one fan interpretation. I've laid out my theory pretty clearly, I think. 3, what do you think of the solution to the Foxy grid? A couple months ago, there was this whole, hullabaloo about, the Foxy grid has been solved. Someone solved it on Reddit. And I was like, that's awesome. I'm really glad that someone figured it out. It said something about, my name is Michael or something. And then that was also very swiftly disproven as, not being a reasonable way to solve it. And I'm not super caught up on that whole event, just that it happened, and then it was disproven. I have no idea what the solution to the Foxy grid is. I've never done it myself. I hope that one day we figure it out, but I do not know. Have you seen the Dual Princess Theories 2-hour video about FNAF? Yes, I had people send this to me on Twitter. I had people email this to me. I've had multiple comments about this video. I watched that video the day after it came out. It was in my recommended. I watch a lot of FNAF videos, and so I get recommended them even from small channels, and I love that video. I do not agree with that video. The video is put together very well. It is argued very well. That does not mean I have to believe in the conclusion. Great video, but I do have a lot of people who want me to respond to it or react to it or something like that. And the reason I don't want to do that is because they are such a small channel that for me to go in and be like, I'm going to break down all their theories and why their evidence is wrong. That's just mean. I feel like I can make fun of Matt Pat. I made one joke about John FNAF, and I even regret that just because as much as he is a channel with almost 1 million subscribers and he's been doing this for longer than me, it's still just rude. And I'm writing a video. I've been writing a video for months actually. going through one of his videos and explaining why he is so good at what he does, and I still feel bad about making jokes at his expense. As much as I very much respect him, as much as he is a significantly larger channel than me, I still don't want to do that to him. And so the idea of doing that to a channel that's significantly smaller than me, that's been doing it for less time than me, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to break down their theory and disprove them. Likewise, I'm not going to do a reaction to it because the video is an hour long. So in general, I love the video. I think they're doing a great job. If they're watching this, keep it up. You guys are phenomenal. If you haven't seen the video yet, go and watch it. But in general, if you're asking for my opinion on it, I don't believe it. Opinions on Balloon Boy. He's my favorite character, but everyone seems to hate him. I like Balloon Boy. I think we're going to get a lot more about him during whatever the Carnival Festival game is that we're very obviously going to be getting sometime in the future. I like Balloon Boy. When he was first introduced, I'm like, why is he here? He doesn't thematically fit with literally anything. But I do think he's just a silly little guy. What do you think about the theory that the fun times were made using Remnant from the FNAF 2 murders and not the original MCI kids? I think it explains a lot of things, especially Happiest Day and what happened to the toys after FNAF 2. I also think it fits the timeline better. My issue with any theory that involves the FNAF 2 murders is that the hillside in FNAF 6 only has the 5 graves of the MCI victims. And so to me, that implies that bodies of the FNAF 2 murderers were found. That they were found and they were buried. I think William obviously cleaned up after himself or something, but I do not think they wanted to possess any animatronics, and I think that the bodies were found, which is why it's not a missing children incident. So that's kind of why I don't believe this. Again, that's more of a narrative thing as opposed to oh, I have solid evidence. It's just that it doesn't really make any sense for that grave scene, what was theoretically one of the finales of the game, of the series, to not include all of the murder victims, unless there's something that specifically separated these 5 from all the others. And I think what separated those 5 from all the others is that the bodies were never found, and that they went on to be trapped in the torment of possessing animatronics for years, for decades. Do you think we'll ever find out what was inside the FNAF 4 box? Find out as in, Scott's gonna make a Reddit post? No. Find out as in someone's going to figure it out? Yes. I think that if you stop and you only look at things released before FNAF 4, obviously Scott intended for it to be figured out, and I think it can be figured out. I think he used Sister Location to answer some of the questions that we had, like that Mike Schmidt is Mike Afton and that he is Foxy Bro. So I think with that piece of knowledge, which I do not think was a retcon, I think that him being an Afton may have been a retcon, but I do not think that Foxy Bro being Mike Schmidt was a retcon. With that knowledge, I think you can probably figure it out, and that if everybody guessed what the answer was, somebody's going to be right. So yes, I think we can figure it out. I do not think Scott's ever going to tell us. What's the story behind Balloon Boy? I don't know. Let's wait for that festival game. What size pants do you think Phone Guy wore? I always kind of pictured Phone Guy as being really skinny. I guess you could picture him as being a big, round, fat security guard man. I always pictured him as being very scrawny. I kind of pictured him looking like Shaggy, which is weird because of how that went down with Matthew Lillard playing William Afton. But yeah, definitely very skinny, scrawny man. Not a question, but an idea. What if Ballora is a representation of Henry's wife? Mocking him, how he went deeper into the work like in the books, etc. I guess the best way to say it is that I think that the lore implications of any Easter egg is equal in size to the Easter egg itself. So I think that Ballora's song or Ballora herself being a representation of a character who at that point in the games barely existed, that being Henry, who only was called the owner of Fred Bear's Family Diner in FNAF 2, of his wife being represented by Ballora, is just it's too much for that to be her only existence in the game, right? I don't think Mrs. Afton exists. I guess Henry's wife exists a little more because she's in the books, but still no. I think that the thing we talked about earlier where Ballora's song is clearly just about what is going on at that exact moment in gameplay is the most logical conclusion, that she's singing to Mike because he's crawling along inside the wall. Can you please make a video stance on Dittophobia? I will when I get there. What are some pieces of lore that you think are unimportant Easter eggs that other theorists claim are relevant to solve a big part of the story? The lack of broken glass outside the runaway's window. The car being purple. What's interesting is I think nobody really talks about how you have to play Security Puppet a couple times before you get the Easter egg ending of Charlie being trapped outside the window. No one ever talks about how maybe there were 3 attempts on her life before William got her alone, or maybe FREDDY'S was only open for 3 days, right? Like, no one talks about that as an important piece of evidence. And I do not think it was an important piece of evidence. I just think it's always funny how some small things no one looks at. And then some small things people make the cornerstone of their huge, important, all-encompassing theories. So those are really the only ones that I can think of right now. Balora's song will now enter that list because I am pretty sure that it was what I have said twice now, which is that it was just talking to Mike crawling along inside the walls. So that probably has too much lore significance from the community on it. And obviously I'm guilty of that because I just made a whole video delving way too deep into it. But yeah, I'm sure that most of my critics would probably say that me pointing to FNAF World's video game afterlife as like being super important is probably me putting too much emphasis on it, given that it is the cornerstone of my entire theory. The difference is that I believe that one, and that's why I believe it. Because I do. Circular logic. Was that the bite of 87? No, that was the bite of 83. Get it right, Markiplier. How dare you? Why didn't the KCI kids kidnapped children's incident being the FNAF 2 murders? Most people in the community call it the dead children's incident. I'm calling it the kidnapped, because in all cases they're dead, so why would you call it dead? I'm calling it whatever. Why didn't that work in getting the kids to possess the toy animatronics? My theory basically is that the only reason the FNAF 1 animatronics got possessed is because Charlie the puppet did it on purpose. She thought she was helping. At no point in the series is William able to purposefully get somebody to possess an animatronic. Charlie possessing the puppet was a freak accident. Cici partially possessing Fredbear was an accident. The other kids possessing the animatronics was an accident because William hid them in the suits, and then Charlie got them to possess the suits. Elizabeth possessing Baby was William's intention, probably, but obviously it was not intended to be Elizabeth, so that was an accident. I think William is only able to take the already possessed remnant, remove it from the haunted animatronics, and put it into the Fun Times. At no point does he ever purposefully get a child to possess anything. Even himself, obviously, he did not intend to possess Springtrap. So I think it didn't work because he doesn't know how it works, and so when he tries to do it on purpose, it doesn't work. How did the spirits end up being able to use the logbook to communicate? The real answer is that they're ghosts and they just work the way that they work, however Scott says they work. I think a good in-universe answer is that the spirits can obviously change the appearance of posters. The posters in FNAF 1 change, Foxy's sign changes. In one of the alleyway screenshots in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, there's like a little depiction of a screaming puppet. So they can change the words on the page the same way that they can change the depictions on the posters. Why didn't Phone Guy leave after the first location got shut down, let alone the second? It's a joke about people who, like, don't care about the well-being of workers or who notice stuff going wrong around them, but it's just like, I need a paycheck, I'll work here. Like, it's just a joke. Do you think there's something we missed in the first 4 FNAF games to clarify the original intent of the story even further? Absolutely. And not only do I think that we've obviously missed things, but I think that we've misinterpreted things. And one of the reasons that I, every single time, will promote more people making videos about FNAF is because I think that we all have our biases and our own lenses that we view things through. And I think the more voices we have out there, the higher the chance of someone stumbling upon the correct answer is. So I 100% believe that the correct answer is still out there waiting to be discovered. Could the very foundations of Freddy's buildings be haunted? Is this why the paper plates move? Is this why the posters change? Something to think about. Yes, I think that there is probably something about the fact that there's been so much, like, death in this location that there's something about the building that is haunted, right? Like, that's how real ghost stories work. Oh, this item is haunted because it was their favorite doll, or this building is haunted because there was this asylum is haunted because there's so many bad things that happened there, right? Like, just lingering spiritual energy. And yes, that's probably why the paper plates move. How much trust should we put into used removed content, i.e. Cassie's name being removed? That's in Security Breach. The file for the Princess and Princess Quest was named Cassidy. And the Fazback saying FNAF 1 is in 1993. I think that if something was removed, it was removed for a reason. The problem is that that reason could be that it's wrong, or the reason could be that they don't want us to see it. For example, the Faz facts from I think they're from FNAF AR, Special Delivery. One of them is like, the most dangerous job for a security guard in 1993. No, the most dangerous job was being a security guard in 1993. Or Freddy's had the best voted pizza in Utah from 1980 whatever to 1993. It's possible those were removed because they just didn't get to that point in development of the game before it got unceremoniously shut down and abandoned and then shut down years later. It could be because it's wrong, or it could just be because it no longer fit their vision and it was just a thing that was left in the files of the game. Because we don't know, I think we cannot use that as evidence. Obviously, I don't, because I think FNAF 1 took place in 1992. Things like Cassidy's name no longer being the princess's name could be for basically both reasons. One, we're not supposed to know that yet, or two, it's incorrect. I'm not sure how that could have been incorrect, though. Like, there's only a couple names in the FNAF franchise. I don't know why somebody would name a file one of those names and have it not be the intention. So that one I'm a little more leaning to that's how it's supposed to be. But also, I do not think it should be the cornerstone or the foundation of any theory. Just, it's something to mention. Even the conversation that I used in my Mrs. Afton video, it's cut content, and in that video I said it's probably cut because it's not canon. Otherwise, they could have just re-implemented it, and it would have literally been like a button click, right? You're just like, when you go here, play this. If it was a mistake, if they didn't have time to implement it, they could have just done it in an update. And so I think that we can reason that the reason it was never put in is because someone decided, higher up in the chain that it shouldn't be there. And that might be because we're not supposed to read into it. So it's a case-by-case basis. Can you talk about your theories relating to FNAF Sister Location's breaker map? The only important thing I have to say about that I haven't already said is that I think that it's simply a depiction of, like a zoomed out depiction, right? Like that's a phrase I use in my Mrs. Afton video a lot. It's a depiction of the important locations to William. It's made that way so that the player recognizes it as locations from FNAF 4, not necessarily as a practical thing that William would have used in the game, right? Like that was made by Scott, not by William. That's my interpretation. What it means, I don't know. I'm not confident, but, it's still fun to theorize about. Jacko Chica and some of the other Halloween characters are in UCN. They were previously not canon, but now they are. Why are they all canon now? Did William just decide to get festive while torturing Mike? The FNAF 4 update is weird, because Scott said that some characters can be seen as canon, like Nightmare Yon and Nightmare Balloon Boy, and then some of them can't. I think that for gameplay reasons, they're in UCN because they exist, right? Like, Scott wanted everyone to be here, so therefore you have to have Jacko Chica, because she's a character who exists. And I think that the reason that she's not canon in FNAF 4 is because, for whatever reason, in the story that Scott's wanting to tell, there's no reason for there to be a Jacko Chica. The reason that she is canon in UCN is because all of the characters are sort of nightmares, right? Like, they're not real. And so, therefore, the idea of a flaming Chica could just be a thing. Like, hey, this Chica is on fire because William was burned to death, like, twice. The real answer is that Scott wanted to include her because she was a real character in a DLC, like in real life. Why she's canon now, no idea what the answer is. What's the girl's room with the mangled toy in FNAF 4 mean? It's Elizabeth's room, and that just shows us that Mangle existed in 1983, sorry. What happened to Golden Freddy after William gets spring-locked? They shove it in a closet. Does he move around the world freely? No, I think that he just kind of sits in one place and he's able to, like, project himself places. Does his spirit move on to some other object like Spring Body or the Fun Times? I think Cici is the doll. I think the doll is in the suit. That's my conclusion. What does the mound of dirt in Midnight Motorist mean? I've been very clear that I think that the patch of dirt that is in the shape of a house foundation with a porch, it is very clearly supposed to be a shape of something, and that's what it looks like to me. I think it is to symbolize that they are breaking ground on building a house there, and that house is probably one of William's 2 homes. And that is what that means. That small detail is just telling us when Midnight Motorist, when later that night takes place. It takes place when William is building one of his houses. That's what that means. How much of this video game is haunted? I think that they are all haunted to the degree that the animatronics are haunted, and that Remnant was used in their, like, circuit boards. Who created the FNAF 4 End of Night mini games and why? My opinion is that the FNAF 4 mini games were sort of a creation within the digital world of Henry and Cassidy communicating. In general, my biggest hope has always been that I want other people to take my theory of video game theory and then discuss it through their own lens, because I think that lenses and biases are going to bring us to different conclusions, and they might say something that I never thought of, or they might find evidence that I never thought of. So my conclusion in my big video is that Henry programmed the video game to tell Cassidy the story I don't necessarily believe that. That's just what I think the easiest conclusion to come to is. How do we know who plays the minigames anyway? I think the minigames are very clearly being played by Cassidy because I think that she's a dual protagonist. That's my overall theory, is that the minigames are being experienced by Cassidy, which is how she's learning everything. And then you contrast this with in UCN when if every game has an A and a B story with one of them being Mike experiencing the night gameplay and Cassidy experiencing the minigames, then UCN, you now have William experiencing the Cassidy is the antagonist who's making everything happen. And Mike is now doing the bonus end of night content, which is the TV shows, because Mike watches TV. If there's one thing we know about Michael Afton, it's that he watches TV. And so if you extrapolate that to all the older games, it's that Cassidy is playing the video games, the mini games. Does it always have to be Cassidy? It doesn't always have to be, obviously. I just think that it is. What do the paper plates mean? How do they move? Please, I need answers. Me too. Scott, what do the paper plates mean? Do you think there will ever be a FNAF attraction at Universal, like a ride or something for Halloween Horror Nights? They have the animatronics. I don't see why. I really hope so. I really hope that people get to see them, even if they don't, move around. Just, have them be in, a haunted building or something. Finally, we are on to the last two big questions. Do you think Frights and Tales are canon? I do not have a big opinion on Tales, but I do currently have an assumption on Frights. An assumption that you will learn. What's your next big project? I love the latest one about Mrs. Afton. In my next big project. That's right, at the end of this video, I'm announcing what my next big ongoing project is, which is reading through all of the Fazbear Frights books. I'm going to read through the books. I'm reading through them multiple times, actually. I'm currently reading them. Obviously, I'm going to turn each one into a video discussing what it means, how it fits into the lore of the series, or the lore of the Frights books themselves, go through the symbolism. I'm going to break them down like you would break down a serious novel in English class. I've taken so many handwritten notes about these silly little goosebump stories, and I'm going to make that into my next ongoing series. So while I will still have one-off videos every once in a while, I'm going to mainly be focusing on my interpretation of the Frights books. My theory going in, my lens that I'm going to be reading them in, is the Frights fiction theory, the fan theory, which is that the same people who made Fazbear's Frights the horror attraction, Fazbear's Fright the horror attraction, the same people who then will go on to make who will hire the indie dev to make the games along the legends of Fazbear, that group of people who's trying to discredit the legends have made these books, these Fazbear Frights books, and have released them in universe. So as I go through the series, I'm going to see, does that theory hold up? In each book, in each instance, is it possible that this could be a book written by someone who is vaguely aware of the real FNAF legends and myths, and that this book could be something that exists in universe? That's my theory going in. I'm going to develop it as I go, and then at the end I'll see, hey, does it still hold up? This is something I have to do before my next, security breach era timeline video comes out. So I could either do it, sit on it until that video comes out, and have a 5-hour section of that video being me talk about the books, or I could release it as I go. So the first video about Into the Pit should be out pretty soon. I say pretty soon, that could be 3 months. Who knows what pretty soon means on this channel. But yes, that is my big announcement at the end of this video, that I'm doing a books series, and people are gonna hate it. Thank you for watching. Be sure to be nice to each other in the comments. Consider supporting the creators you admire. Never lose sight of the things that are most important to you. Check out my podcast, Slap and Dippity, Hopos of Happy Slappy Town. Subscribe if you want to see my Fazbear Frights series. If you have any questions that you want answered in another incarnation of this series where I'm answering questions, leave it in the comments below. And most importantly, give me money on Patreon. No, I'm just kidding. Most importantly, just have a good rest of your day. If you wasted your time watching this, if you spent your time watching this, I hope the rest of your day is filled with more important things. Because as much as we all love FNAF, it is not something that should affect you emotionally. You should not feel anger or upsetness over the way that someone comes to a conclusion about a theory in a video game series, no matter how attached to it you are. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you for watching. What's the significance of Balloon Boy? What's his backstory? I don't know. We'll find out later.